This is the new Zenbook Duo 2025, and while the first generation had its limitations, this second iteration, equipped with Intel's new Arrow Lake processors, is a different beast. Battery life remains stellar despite the increase in raw performance, and the two OLED displays are simply fabulous. As the saying goes, what's better than one OLED screen? I'll tell you, two OLED screens. And all of this contributes to the uniqueness of this machine. Last year's model understandably sparked a lot of oohs and ahs. Essentially, Asus introduced a laptop that looked like any other 14-inch portable, but it offered not one, but two touchscreen OLED displays. From this perspective, there wasn't much that needed changing, because in the end, this is just a second-generation model that fixes a few of the minor issues of the first. The physical attributes of this laptop remain largely unchanged, so I'll just highlight the differences and updates. The Zenbook Duo 2025 is without a doubt the coolest dual-screen notebook on the market. Nothing else offers the same lightweight and user-friendly package, suitable for both everyday scenarios and those who need extended workspace. There are several versions available, as expected, some with slightly weaker processors and lower screen resolution. But the one we have here is the king of the hill, the UX8406 CA model, featuring 3K resolution displays each. It also comes equipped with the surprisingly powerful Core Ultra 9 285H processor with an integrated Intel Arc 140T graphics card, which obliterates the previous Meteor Lake processors. Of course, we also have a neural processing unit, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Before diving into processor tests and performance details, let's talk a little more about design and build quality, because after all, that's the real wow factor of this laptop. The bottom part of the laptop is a bit chunkier because it houses both a display and a keyboard with the trackpad. This segment is magnetically attached above the secondary 14-inch OLED display. On the belly of the laptop, you'll also find a retractable stand, which adds a bit of weight and thickness, but it is extremely practical. When you extend the screens, the bottom part lifts slightly, improving airflow and providing more space for the downward firing speakers. Additionally, this slight tilt enhances typing comfort. The keyboard itself is detachable, comfortable, and elegant. It's just 7 mm thick and weighs a little over 300 grams, yet solid and rigid enough to be used comfortably even on your lap after detaching it from the laptop. The key travel is 1.4 mm, which I'd dare to say is ideal for heavy typists, and the touchpad is large and surprisingly precise. Other than that, the hinges are solid, all elements align nicely, and the laptop overall is nowhere near as thick, heavy or clunky as you might expect. What I mean is that it doesn't feel too different from a standard, traditional laptop with a single screen. Aesthetically, the lid looks clean and sleek, featuring a thin line pattern and a small, subtle logo. The air vents are located on the sides, and the port selection remains the same as last year, although some of them have been repositioned. Now there's one Thunderbolt 4 port on each side, which I consider a smart move. On the left, you also get a full-size USB 3.2 port and a 3.5mm audio jack. On the right side, the Thunderbolt 4 port is accompanied by a full-size HDMI 2.1. Once again, there's no Ethernet port in this iteration, but the new Zenbook Duo supports Wi-Fi 7 and the latest Bluetooth version 5.4. And before we move on to performance, let's talk a bit about the usage scenarios of this gadget, because in the end, that's what really matters, right? The first scenario would be using one screen as main display and the second as a virtual keyboard and touchpad, or if you prefer, you can use the second screen for handwriting and drawing with the pen, which may or may not be included in the package. To achieve this setup, you need to detach the keyboard, but the process is well thought out. The underside of the keyboard is super smooth, so it doesn't scratch or damage the secondary screen, and after multiple attachments and detachments, I noticed that the risk of accidentally detaching it is non-existent, because the magnets are firm and align perfectly. At the same time, it is not difficult to remove it either, you just have to pull a little harder. A second scenario is the extended workspace mode, where you use both screens for work. This setup can be arranged in two ways, one above the other or side by side. In the first variant, you can use the top screen for the main application you're working on, while the lower one can be used for messaging apps, a browser, or note-taking. Switching between the two screens can be done with a simple key press. Honestly, at first I was skeptical about this type of setup. It seemed fragile to me, but I was wrong. The stand is incredibly solid and provides an easy perspective on the two stunning 14-inch OLED screens. The hinge is also very sturdy, so this setup doesn't feel wobbly at all. The second scenario, the side-by-side book position, is less intuitive. Asus claims that this would be ideal, for example, for those who already use vertically placed monitors, programmers, accounts, or journalists. The positioning is also done with the help of the stand that extends from the chassis, but honestly, this solution no longer seems as stable to me. Moreover, the hot air exhaust is no longer as efficient, since half of the vents are blowing directly into the desk. On top of that, you also lose access to some ports, either some USBs or an HDMI. So no, this mode is not as practical as the stacked screen setup. And last but not least is what they call sharing mode. In this case, the gadget opens completely to 180 degrees, making it a suitable scenario for presentations where someone is sitting across the table. It's not exactly a projector replacement, but for small groups wanting to glance at a screen, it can be a good solution. And surprisingly for Asus, even from a software perspective, switching between windows, resizing, and all the other functions work without too much hassle. I have encountered instances of false input, where the second screen randomly opened the keyboard or various windows, but nothing recurring enough to be truly frustrating. And of course, if you don't want any of the benefits of using two screens, you can simply use it as a traditional laptop. But then I don't really see why you would buy a dual screen device in the first place. And now let's move on to the heart that beats inside this Zenbook Duo. It seems that Intel's Arrow Lake processor series was a surprise for everyone, and not an unpleasant one, as we've come to expect from Intel lately. This model, the Ultra 9 285H, has 16 cores, 16 threads, and a 45-watt power consumption. The integrated graphics processor is also impressive, but surprisingly, Intel has hit the brakes when it comes to the NPU, the dedicated processing unit for AI tasks. And with the risk of sounding old-fashioned, I dare to say that I don't care. The NPU in this model has only 13 TOPS, compared to 45, which is the minimum required by Microsoft for a laptop to qualify for Copilot+. It seems that in this case, the Zenbook Duo sacrifices a powerful NPU in favor of better battery life. But let's talk numbers to better understand what a powerhouse this processor is. In Geekbench 6, we achieved an excellent score of 15,629 points in multi-core and nearly 3,000 in single-core, far surpassing the mediocre 185H from last year's Meteor Lake series and slightly outperforming the Snapdragon X Elite, but falling behind AMD's Ryzen AI 9 HX370. In Cinebench R23, we surpassed 18,000 points in multi-core and 2,100 in single-core. And in the 2024 version of this benchmark, we came close to 1,000 points. In the 3D Mark suit, it performed well, scoring over 4,500 points in TimeSpy and around 9,600 in Firestrike. No, it does not outperform the Apple M4, and as I mentioned, it's also behind AMD's equivalent, but it surpassed Qualcomm's processor in our tests, and in the end, it's an x86 architecture chip, meaning full compatibility with any past, present, and future Windows applications. Its integrated graphics card, ARC 140T, is roughly at the level of a laptop RTX 3050, which is quite impressive. The laptop feels fast and responsive no matter what task you're working on, and all of this comes without a major impact on battery life. Speaking of which, battery life was unexpectedly good. Honestly, I expected that in the case of a laptop with two large screens, the battery would take a serious hit. A remarkable feature is that the displays automatically switch to 120 Hz when plugged in, but on battery, in our tests, lasted around 6-7 hours of work with both screens on, which is not bad at all, and about 9-10 hours with a single screen on and the power profile set to balanced. Temperatures are decent, as is fan noise, even under full load. Yes, there is some heat and noise, but the situation is better than I expected, considering how small the intake vents are. The processor never exceeded 60 degrees Celsius, and the chassis temperature remained within acceptable limits, even in the Cinebench stress test. Predictably, the bottom part gets warmer because, like a tablet, it houses both the processor and the display, with the keyboard sitting on top of it. But overall, there's no reason to worry about the laptop getting too hot or too loud. The audio quality is decent as well, meaning the Zenbook Duo is surprisingly loud for its size, but at higher volumes the sound becomes mixed and unclear. Still, it is more than good for online meetings or listening to music while working. This is not the first dual-screen laptop I've tested, and when I say that, I'm not just referring to the previous Zenbook Duo model, but also to its competition from Lenovo, namely the YogaBook 9i. The latter is thinner and feels a bit more premium and polished, but its biggest problem is that the keyboard and stand are separate components, which personally I don't find appealing. Plus, it's more expensive. Yes, the Zenbook Duo is bulkier, but it feels more serious and solid. Alright, but who is this laptop actually meant for? Well, for absolutely anyone who needs more workspace. It elegantly and efficiently eliminates the need for a second monitor. At the same time, it can still function as a traditional laptop, just like any other. It's not perfect, but in terms of functionality and innovation, it's absolutely amazing. The 2025 model improves on an already great product. The addition of the Intel Ultra 9 285H also fixes one of the few drawbacks of the previous model: raw performance. And even with this improvement, battery life has also gotten better instead of worse, albeit marginally. The two 3K OLED screens are sensational, and I would choose these without hesitation over their Full HD variants. The same goes for the processor. I would opt without blinking for the top-tier 285H instead of the cheaper and more modest 255H. The user experience is unexpectedly smooth and free of glitches. It is essentially a compact workstation that you can carry around anywhere, just like any regular laptop. I couldn't resist, so I also played a few quick matches of CS2, and at Full HD resolution, the laptop maintained over 100 FPS constantly, which makes it suitable even for esports gaming or casual gaming on one screen, while pretending to work from home on the other. I'm joking, of course, but the point is that you can even play lighter games. The price for the top-tier version, the one here, with Core Ultra 9 285H, 32 GB of RAM, 1TB SSD and 3K 120Hz OLED displays, is $1,700 on Asus's online store, while the Ultra 7 variant is $100 less. If you want a practical, eye-catching and truly unique laptop, the Zenbook Duo 2025 is a choice you can't go wrong with. For this money, you literally get a lot of laptop. And with that, we'll wrap it up here. I leave it to you to share your thoughts below in the comments section. What do you think of the Zenbook Duo? How many of you would find it useful depending on the types of tasks you generally perform on a laptop? What do you think about the price? Is it too high, too low, or fair for what this laptop offers? Please subscribe to our Tiny Tech channel. Thank you all and wish you all the best.